The transfer portal is open, and sure, it's exciting to think about who Auburn could go get, but maintaining the roster is the most important thing.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Quick programming note. This episode was recorded before the news of Braden Joyner, Auburn offensive lineman, expecting to enter the transfer portal per multiple reports that came out Tuesday night. Mike G and I discuss. We actually mentioned Joyner by name just because we had heard rumblings before the news broke. And so the conversation's crafted around like hinting that stuff like that might happen. So that's what's going on there. So enjoy the show. It's a War Rapport Wednesday with Mike G of the War Rapport. Happy Portal Day to all who celebrate. What a crazy week and a half this could potentially be for all of college football. And it's really kind of dated back even the last few days. So we'll talk about who Auburn could go get and positionally what do we want Auburn to go and do. But to me, Mike G, I said at the top of the show just then, I just think with the talent that's going to be available this portal window, it's much more important for Auburn to hold on to guys and hold on to quality depth than it will be to go out and hit a home run this portal window. I think you can still do both. And I'm not talking about going and just adding a few guys that could potentially be rotational pieces. I just don't think that home run is going to be there in positions where Auburn needs them over the next week and a half.
Well, the second portal window is always the weaker of the two, right? Like
typically, yeah, sure.
Right. So, if you're Auburn and development is happening on the Plains and Hugh Freeze's program, then yes, I agree with you 100%. This is about maintaining re-recruiting your roster. Now, we talked about this a ton of times on this show. You've got to re-recruit your roster now, like 2 or 3 times a year, because every time a portal window opens, you've got to sell to your guys, stay at home. Here's the plan. Here's what we need, right? And continuity, one of the things I love about NIL is keeping high-level talent in college longer, which I think improves the quality of the college game, but also gives coaches a chance to build something special, build toward that special year. So, yeah, I agree 100%. This is going to be about keeping the guys that you have, that you believe in, and that you've invested in, Zach, on your roster.
Yeah. And not to say that there won't be talented guys that enter. I mean, Keandre Lambert-Smith, Auburn got in this portal window a year ago. I believe Kieron Crawford was the guy that they got later. I mean, they've gotten plenty of value in the spring window. And I think they'll do it again. But what's going to keep Auburn from potentially competing in this prove-it year for Hugh Freeze that we all agree on, whether you like Hugh Freeze, whether you dislike Hugh Freeze, whether you're an Auburn person or you're outside of Auburn looking in, we all agree that this is a prove-it year for Auburn and Hugh Freeze. And the way that you're going to keep all of that together is by keeping your roster together and trying to keep as much of your two deep in as possible. And so we'll certainly see what that looks like. But to me, I think a lot of this has to do with keeping quality depth. And I'm not talking about some of the corners and defensive backs that Auburn lost earlier this week when reports surfaced that they plan to enter the portal. I'm not talking about, like JC Hart, I think is a good player, but he wasn't going to play a lot this year anyway. And I think he was the best of the guys that so far that are there. I mean, there's always going to be rumor, right? There's always going to be rumor of some of these fringe players that aren't starters because that's the discussion, right? Those are the guys that other schools see as low-hanging fruit because we all know that tampering is going on. Like there's a rumor for a few guys, like I saw it on a message board earlier this week about like Braden Joyner, a guy who's not a starter, but could be. And if the right guy gets hurt or whatever, are guys like that available to other schools? Is the grass greener for guys who maybe aren't starters, but are right behind and kind of the next guys up to me, those are the guys that I think make this roster better than any Auburn roster has been in a hot minute because of the quality depth at key positions, offensive line, corner, running back, quarterback, wide receiver. And so to me, it's can Auburn hold off other coaches and other schools playing the whole portal game that we've seen throughout this era of college football?
Well, you made a statement a second ago about, what is it for Auburn that's going to move that needle in 2025, right?
Sure.
And for me, it's two things. It's quarterback play and if it's offensive line play. So like you said, the Braden Joiners of the world, I think Hugh Freeze has taken a stack the deck around the quarterback approach to this roster. He said, I'm going to go out and I'm going to find guys with great catch radius. I'm going to get my QBs, the greatest pass catchers that I ever caught passes in the last 3 years. And I'm going to put them on this roster. And then you got to go out and you got to get the greatest blockers and the guys who will protect that QB and give him a higher floor to be able to go out and make it go through his reads and make good throws. Yeah. So, until you find that dude at quarterback, Auburn's always needed us. It just feels like Auburn always needs a savior at quarterback rather than just having a good, solid team all around. This might be.
Well, I mean, there's limits to that, right? I mean, that was the discussion last year. It's like, oh, okay, well, Peyton Thorne has all these weapons around them, and it didn't work. Still, so there's still limits to it. But yeah, I mean, when Hank was coming on the show, pretty often. I asked him, is it easier to play quarterback at Auburn now than it was the previous year? And he's like, yes, right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, Auburn doesn't have a guy that has been on campus for 3 years or even a guy who was on campus last year, but you got to think that trend has still continued where it's easier to play quarterback at Auburn now than at any point that it has been since 2017, I would say.
Yeah, I don't know if it's ever been easy to play quarterback under Gus, but I get what you're putting down, right? Like, in fairness to Peyton,
2019 there were weapons, but
sure.
I think I like the O-line situation better in 17 with the receivers. So, I mean, it's close, but it's still been half a decade, right?
Yeah. I think already this roster is in the best condition that it's been in overall. Honestly, I don't think Auburn had much of a roster issue last year. I think the limitations were play calling and game planning.
I agree.
So I'm going to throw Peyton Thorne that bone back. But like I said, offensive line has been it. That's what Auburn fans have bemoaned for years, Zach. It was Gus's lack of recruiting of high-level high school offensive linemen, no tackles for years on years and years, and constantly just patchworking together a line rather than developing guys in the system. And I think Hugh Freeze is trying desperately to fix that, but that's probably the longest fix that you have, because when you look at the portal, there are not a ton of high-level offensive linemen in the portal. That's why the guys that you have that are good that you're talking about that are the backups that are right there. That's what they're prime for the picking, and you've got to protect them.
Yeah, because elite starting tackles don't enter the portal. I mean, that's why Xavier Chaplin was such a big deal.
Yeah.
When he became available, and he was a hot commodity. Auburn's not the only school that wanted Xavier Chaplin in the portal. So to me, it's I've seen a lot of Auburn fans mention, because it's putting out questions on social media, like, what position do you want Auburn to go out and get? Like, I've seen a lot of people say offensive line, and it's like, is that going to be there? Is that going to be there? And I'm not expecting a whole lot of offensive linemen that are better than what Auburn currently has to enter. I'm just not. Just not. I could be wrong.
If there's one good one, you go get that one good one, and then you move on, right? Like, that's how I feel, because of the good ones, they're going to have their pick of the litter. They're going to be in high demand. But if you're Hugh Freeze, you just want to make sure Auburn is an attractive spot for high-level offensive linemen in both portal windows, and I think Auburn is.
Would you rather Auburn get an interior guy on the O-line or a tackle if they went that route?
Tackle.
mean, tackle's definitely the better value.
For sure. Right.
But
Yeah.
then, are they having to spend
Who's your
more
quarterback?
money?
Is your quarterback Jackson Arnold or Deuce Knight? Is your quarterback a lefty or a righty? Because I want you to get whoever's.
Yeah, no, I think he's a righty with Jackson for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you like the tackles. I mean, we've heard mixed reviews on Mason Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right now, like Ty Buster's in the 2 deep at tackle. We've seen him kind of be with the 2s at offensive tackle, but I still think the depth is there because that's also under the assumption, like, Xavier Chaplin wasn't lining up. So everybody scoots down a spot once Chaplin returns. But I don't know. That's a lot of guys in that room. And the O-line might be a situation where guys do enter the portal because it is kind of competitive. And so, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what the path of playing time looks like for some of those guys that stay at Auburn. But that depth is there. And it certainly seems like the guys who are slotted in behind these starters have a solid chance to start in 2026 or at least compete for starting jobs. And hopefully that's enough. Hopefully that carrot to kind of dangle in front of them is enough to say, like, hey, we want to keep you here because you are part of the future of this program. What other positions could we see Auburn go out and get in the portal? That's next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Mike G, today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. I can't imagine wagering anywhere other than with our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. And they got deals. They've always got deals right now. You place and win your first $5 bet, $250 in bonus bets, Mike G.
Wow.
I mean, the return on potential investment there could be insane.
Put $5 on Auburn baseball to do anything awesome over the next.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Hottest team in college baseball?
Hottest.
Probably the case right now. So don't miss out. Head over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Mike G of the War Report hanging out with us. Also hosts Locked On UCF. Be sure to subscribe to him over there as well. Hugh Freeze was asked this in his post-game or post-A-Day presser. What positions? Danced around it a bit, then said defensive line, pass rusher, linebacker would all make sense. And the way he talked about the offense and that was like, it almost felt like he was saying, like, we're good there. Like we really like the offensive roster, which is kind of a breath of fresh air, kind of new, right? Where we're not constantly trying to patchwork and, catch up with what else is happening in the conference. Like offensively, it does seem like there's not a whole lot of holes as far as what you need to go out and get, as far as what we're expecting to be available in the spring portal. So if you had to rank those, do you have a comment on the offense first?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree. It's the most confident I've heard him talk about this offense in 3 years. His tone is completely different. You and I were both sitting there in person. Zach, he has put a lot of emphasis on year 3 for everything. When he got hired, he said, if we're not in the top 6 or 7 in recruiting by year 3, everybody here is going to be looking for a job. Well, year 2, he said, he believed it because he got it done. Now year 3, again, his tone has changed and he's saying we should be competitive this year. Not, we need guys and we got to recruit. No. He's saying it's time to go compete. And I love that attitude from Auburn's ball coach because it is time to go compete. It is a prove-it year. You've been given every single resource a coach could ask for to recruit to the Plains. Now you got to go do something with it. And so, yeah, I can understand why he probably doesn't have a ton of questions about his personnel. You've addressed it. He said he would, and he's done it. He stood by that. I have more questions about what he's going to do with it than what he has. But
I'm with you.
I mean, I love where they're at from a personnel standpoint offensively.
No, and Auburn, the portal's open for 10 days or whatever. Let's just call it what it's been. This rebuild, it sucked. It has not been fun going through this rebuild. We all want Auburn football to be good again. And it's almost been worse with what they did on the field last year because it's they're so close. They're so close. And they kept finding heartbreaking ways to lose over the last 2 years. But it it's kind of frustrating because Hugh Freeze will get up there and kind of hint that they're close. And it's like, I think he's right. It's just not what we want to hear because we don't want to be close. We want to be there. And I think Auburn holding on to this roster and then filling just a few holes that they have on the defensive side of the ball over the next 10 days is what gets you there. It's what says, okay, maybe, hopefully, this rebuild is behind us, which is pretty big. Like, that's a pretty big thing as far as turning where you are as a program into being a rebuild, to saying, like, let's strap them up. Let's go hit somebody. Let's go score some points, and let's win football games again.
Yeah. Like, this is the turning point year for this program, and I can't stress that enough. This is going to be the year where Auburn fans and the administration find out whether I think they got their guy at coach. Last year, when Oklahoma came to Auburn for the first time ever in the history of college football, and it was exciting. Right. And ESPN came, and Feinbaum invited me on set. I went on with our friend Nathan King from 247 Sports. Yeah. Before us, John Cohen went to go talk to Feinbaum. And for 20 minutes, I listened to him make every single excuse he could possibly make for the turnover that this roster had, and why Auburn is kind of where it is, and why the results were disappointing. Right? You're out of those excuses now. It is a show me year. There were a lot of people who didn't think that Auburn did what they needed to do at quarterback by getting Jackson Arnold. Right? I was not in that camp because I saw what the strategy was. I think the strategy was, again, stack the deck around the QB no matter who it is, set a safe floor, and then try to build on that. So you've got experienced runners returning in the running back room, and Damari Alston and Jeremiah Cobb. I think you're solid there. You've got, we talked about also on our show, Charlie Five and I actually talked about it. Charlie Five from the Barn. I think this might be, at worst, a top 3 wide receiver room in the conference. At worst.
Oh, yeah, sure.
People are challenging me, well, which 2 are better? I was like, well, I'm not saying that there are 2 better. I'm just saying I think the floor is 3 in the conference. You saw Perry Thompson like I saw him on Saturday. If he does anything close to that on Saturdays, Auburn's going to be insanely good all the way around if Eric Singleton is what he's advertised to be. And Horatio Fields shows any of what he showed in this spring in games in Jordan-Hare on Saturdays. So, where are the holes? Well, I think it is defensive line, and I understand why he went there, right? DJ Durkin has done a fantastic job, but
he's great.
You need to reload for him as well too, and I think they understand that the difference between the SEC and the other conferences for a lot of years have been depth on offensive and defensive line, and Auburn is doing their best to fill every single gap they can in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Right now, I think the holes are defensively. I expect them to be a top 10 unit in the country this year. Right? As
defense?
The defense.
Yards per game?
Yes, total yards per game. I expect them to be, and I expect them to be near or well inside the top 10 in scoring defense as well, too. This should be a really, really good defense. DJ Durkin.
That'd be incredible.
No questions about what he has there. But like I said,
and just to piggyback on your point, like with the schedule, I think it's possible. I think that claim is possible. Sure.
Well, we broke that down, Zach, right? You start with Baylor. You've got 2 cupcakes in there, and then you've got 3 SEC games, and you've just got to find a way to start 4-2. Because that back 6 games, Auburn should win every single one before the Iron Bowl.
Right. Yeah. I mean, especially like with the locations of them. I mean, Kentucky certainly beatable. Missouri losing a ton. A left tackle that's like being talked about going like top 5 overall, losing a quarterback, Luther Burton. I mean, they're losing a ton offensively.
Vandy
specifically,
right?
Vandy, like I know. But it's also, though, so funny that we're talking about these situations where like, oh, well, Auburn surely must win when they lost to them last year, right? And it's like we're talking about like, well, they should go to Arkansas and win in Fayetteville.
Than Auburn, though. They lost to them, but they're not better than Auburn. They
I
just
agree.
won that
I'm
day,
with you.
right? So, I mean, you're looking at this and you're Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Mercer. Win, 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 win. And then you go into the Iron Bowl and you show Kalen DeBoer to be the lesser version of Nick Saban that he is. It's in your house. man.
Be electric.
I'm telling you, the back half of this schedule sets up so nice. So I'm not like Georgia is an L until further notice, man. I cannot seriously look at any schedule with Georgia on it, even though they won't be as good as they were last year. I don't think. I got trouble. Like just the history of that game makes me nervous. But A&M, are they a much better team than Auburn right now? Is Oklahoma?
Oh, Auburn beat them last year.
This schedule is
Auburn should have beaten Oklahoma last year. If you don't throw a pick six in like heartbreaking fashion, you win both. You win that game. So
yeah, 3-3 would be disappointing in that first 6 games. I think you can still
Georgia's included in that first 6, correct?
Correct. Yes, they're the last game of the 6. So 3-3 would be a little disappointing. 4-2.
So 3-3. We're assuming that would mean you go 1-2 at Baylor, at A&M, at Kentucky.
Well, no, Kentucky's in the other half.
Not Kentucky. I'm sorry. At Oklahoma.
Yeah. Texas A&M, Oklahoma, but Baylor.
Baylor, A&M, Oklahoma. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think you got to get Baylor. I think you got to start 3-0, and I think you got to get one of the 3 SEC games after that and make it to the second half of the schedule.
That'd be great. I want to talk more about the holes on the defensive side of the ball and what specifically Auburn needs to do in the portal. That is next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Mike G of the War Report hanging out with us on this wonderful portal day. Hope everyone enjoys it. So I would rank needs for this year. I think there's different ways to have this conversation because I think if you're talking about for the future of the program, I think it makes sense to get a pass rusher that has 2 years left of eligibility. But for this year, defensive line, linebacker, pass rusher would be my order of what I would like to see. Now, if you mix in some eligibility stuff, I think getting a pass rusher for the future of the program is super important as well, because Auburn's in this situation where they're so young at all these positions. So you want to get some older guys too. So I am curious to see how they approach the portal and the type of guys that they really heavily pursue. Do they want more super seniors? Because that's what they did last year. They got a bunch of old guys that had 1 year left of eligibility, and it worked in some cases and it didn't work in others. I'm curious if that's their same strategy or if they try to get guys that have multiple years left of eligibility.
Keldrick Falk should be one of the best pass rushers in the SEC this coming year.
Football players.
If he gets hurt, how worried are you? Right.
Oh, that'd be bad.
Okay. So that tells you a lot about where you need to go in terms of portal, right? If Keldrick Falk goes down, I'm worried about the pass rush. I'm worried about the pass rush. So I would agree, pass rusher would be the first place I would look. And then I think you got to look to linebacker. I think that Auburn has not been as good at linebacker as they have been historically. And protecting that second level of the defense is going to be super important. You need guys who can drop back in coverage, have the flexibility to fill the gaps and hit the hole hard and stop running backs. And the linebacker play has not been the worst ever, but it obviously could have been better. DeMarcus Riddick showed so much potential last year. If that man learns how to play under control, right, how to harness his incredible athletic ability and just play with a little bit more control, he should be one of the best defensive players in the league next year. I said coming in to last year that I thought that people were sleeping on DeMarcus Riddick with all the talk of Cam Coleman and all the other fantastic freshmen that they brought in. I watch out for DeMarcus Riddick, and week after week, come mid-season, we kept calling his name. He went out on a limb in the Iron Bowl. I don't hate it, but at the end of the day, he's got the talent to back it up, and he's going to be a year wiser, a year more mature, and a year more physically developed in DJ Durkin's system. He should sign. You got to go out, find your next DeMarcus Riddick, whether it's in the portal or it's through high school. And you've got to get that guy. I'll be interested to see if during the summer, you and I last spring, we stood next to each other and we said, what in the world is Malik Blockton on? Right? I'm looking for those guys, man. Those guys, that are going to play on that line and play in that linebacker room that can really, really bolster them. And if you've got a guy who's physically developed in the portal that you can go get, because there will be more of those than those offensive linemen, then yes, you go get those guys.
Yeah, I mean, the guys that like Auburn lost due to eligibility, I think they're replaceable during this portal window. Yes. Gage Keys, Trill Carter, Philip Bleedy, Isaiah Rakes, Jason Jones. Like, I think you can get that caliber of player in this portal window because you don't need starters. You need depth pieces.
Yep.
And in fact, if you said, hey, I could get you a clone of Philip Bleedy, I'm like, yes. Great.
100%. Yeah.
If the value makes sense as far as what it takes to get him here from an NIL standpoint, yes, that's good. And ideally, like, I do think you want a guy who's older on the defensive line because you've got so many talented freshmen that I think you're really, really high on. Linebacker, like, it's a similar situation. It's like, find Dorian Maiusi 2.0.
Yeah.
Find a guy that's played 1,000 snaps somewhere at P4 lower level school. That's what they tried to do with Fanaje Gote as well. It's like, I think if they would have added him earlier in the offseason process, maybe we would have played more. I don't know. We'll see. But I mean, what you were describing at linebacker as far as what Auburn needs, they have it. They're just young. I mean, as far as guys who can cover, like, I think Bryce Diaz is going to be fantastic. I think Elijah Melendez is going to be a heck of a thumper, and he might be better. I think calling him a thumper is
Elijah
floor,
Melendez,
right?
Might have been like the steal of the century on defense and recruiting. They recruited that young man away from Miami, and holy crap, Zach.
And he was desired, but he's a guy where it's like his body is going to physically be ready. And then, JJ Falk, I think the future, like his upside is absolutely tremendous. And so, like, you don't want to get in the way of all of that. And so when you look at the linebacker room, like Robert Woodyard's a junior, who I think is solid. Do you want him to be the best linebacker in your room? No. And I don't think he is. I think it's Riddick. But with him being a junior and then Riddick and Atkins being sophomores, DJ Barber being a redshirt freshman, and then the other three that we just mentioned being true freshmen, get a guy with 1 year left of eligibility at linebacker because you don't want to get in the way of the path to playing time for any of these younger guys because they are important. The future of Auburn football needs this linebacker room to achieve what we all think it can. And so to me, I want a grad transfer linebacker. I want an edge/end with 2 years left of eligibility. And you pitch to them saying like, hey, after this year, Kieran Crawford, Chris Murray, and Keldrick Falk, they are gone. We need somebody to put next to a Morris Williams and Jared Smith. And we hope that Jamonta Waller and Joe Phillips turn the corner. And I think that's an attractive pitch.
Yeah.
Depends on the guy, right? And do they go the same route that they did with J-Mac, getting a guy from App State and said like, hey, it's going to take you a year. And then same with Kieran Crawford from Arkansas State. That track record has been successful. We talk about this like with Bruce Pearl. It's like if Bruce Pearl calls a center in the transfer portal, you got to listen. I think if you're Hugh Freeze and you call a group of 5 edge rusher in the portal, like, you got to listen. I think the track record's there at this point.
Yeah, look, the track record is development defensively. That's what the track record is, and it's been proven, and it's borne itself out over the last 2 years under DJ Durkin. Guys are developing, Zach. When we hear about defensive practice, they talk about how organized and detailed and meticulous DJ Durkin is, and that he demands that of his staff. And so they're running that side of the ball like a well-oiled business with really good qualified employees. And you like I said, Auburn has the resources to go out and attract top talent. Goodness gracious, man. Like, I mean, if you look at their football LinkedIns, they look great on the defensive side of the ball, man. And so I've got very little questions there about how they're evaluating talent, not just going after stars or chasing after the guys that everybody else is chasing. They're actually evaluating guys on merit and film and saying, yes, this guy does the things that we need him to do, and he has the potential to do the things that we need him to do. He fits our culture. Let's go get him, whether it's from high school or in the portal. I've been so impressed with how they've managed that side of the ball. And most importantly, Hugh Freeze doesn't feel like he has to micromanage that side of the ball. So he's free to pay attention to elsewhere in his team that needs his attention. Yeah. So you've got to love it defensively, but like I said, it boils down to linebacker and defensive line. You solidified those two spots, and it's not that Auburn is bad in those places. It's you rotate a ton of guys defensively every year. We've seen Dirk and
guys are going to miss games, and if the wrong few guys overlap, as far as if they miss 2 or 3 weeks, like that could be a problem.
Sure,
that could be a problem. If you've got 2 of your starting defensive linemen that are limited during that stretch where Auburn goes to Oklahoma and to Texas A&M, like that's a problem.
Attrition through injury, man. You've got to be prepared for it every single year.
Yep, no doubt. No doubt. Happy Portal Day to all who celebrate. Mike G, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Go check us out at The War Report, every social media platform. Follow me at Mike Gittins on Twitter, at Mike Gittins _ on Instagram. And please, please, please go over to Locked On UCF. Yes. We are having the time of our lives over there. Yes. Love being part of the Locked On Network. Lots of great content. Hit subscribe, support what we're doing there.
Yes, please do it. Please do it. Also, please hit subscribe here, like the video. And if you're tuning in on audio, please subscribe and leave us a review. Helps the show out a ton. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.